In the beginning, Bandai supported Macross Frontier with a series of VF-25 toys that left much to be desired. The air was thick with the sounds of consumers weeping and gnashing their teeth. Hearing our cries, Bandai bestowed upon us a renewal version, or version 2.0 VF-25 toy. It was a whole new toy, and our tears of anguish became tears of joy. Now, as Macross Frontier turns 15 years old, Bandai appears set to reissue these toys with modest improvements. First among these reissues is the special celebration paint scheme that honors the day Harmony Gold finally bent the knee to their lords in the East, allowing the sweet plastic nectar to flow worldwide. The modest improvements begin with the packaging. For those of you convinced styrofoam is bad for toys, you'll be pleased to know that it is no longer in use. To accommodate the plastic clamshell approach, Bandai had to swell the dimensions of the box a tiny bit, which might be frustrating for those of you accumulating a hoard of VF-25 toys. Bandai also appears to be done using the SMS base that came with the stands of the original renewal toys, preferring the generic base for future releases. The contents are otherwise what you would expect from previous releases. People, how are you? I apologize for that opening. I've been listening to a lot of Bernard Cromwell books, and I think it's gotten into my head a little bit. But it is good to be back, and we are starting with the Macross Worldwide release, which you could see in front of you. I mentioned it comes with this generic display stand base. For those of you unfamiliar with the display stand, it doesn't really let you do anything except prop the toy in the air like so. And you can see this toy has some paint applications that are unique for this celebration version. We got the Macross Worldwide badging. We got a skull and crossbones, because why not, darn it. Otherwise, the big difference here, what you're really coming for, is a new matte finish. Here you can see glossy blue Michael on the right, and not so much reflection happening on the left. So that's your big pickup here. We're gonna run through it. There's one other change that immediately jumps to mind, but we'll go through all the features like we normally do and do a full review on this bad boy right here. If you're new to the renewal VF-25, I'll go through a quick rundown of features for you. Flipping the toy over, we do have these intake covers, and you can pop them off like so to reveal the fan detail underneath. Now, unfortunately, there's no painted application there, but you can see it. It's decent enough. The gun attaches. There's no extra piece needed to attach the gun. It just locks in between the forearms. Fists nicely tucked underneath a cover in the shield. We do have these integrated landing gear, and I have cheated a little bit by leaving that door cracked so that I can quickly show you that this front landing gear comes out, has an articulated tow bar, and spinning wheels with little rubber tires. Very nice. Moving to the back, again, flip the door open, and you have access to another little hook. Get a fingernail on it. Nice lock into position there, and again, spinning tire. And if we do that on the other side, we can then put the toy down on the landing gear. It will roll back and forth. Plenty of room for that gun underneath. This toy also has an opening canopy, removable pilot figure, decent paint applications. Not a lot of paint apps inside the cockpit, but some good molded detail. You also get that second seat conversion option. Allows you to push this seat back after you remove that cover. And while this particular variant doesn't come with a co-pilot, some of the other ones did, a little smaller figure that could fit in that back seat. One of the things that's really hard to get across in these video reviews is that handling factor. And in fighter mode, this toy is rock solid, as was the original version 1 toy. No real problems, no surprises, but version 1 was awful when you got to Gearwalk mode. You had to unhinge the intakes, and the backpack just relied on the stiffness of the hinge. Whereas the renewal version, you can see they've added this brace that comes from the crotch up to the back plate and supports all of that weight. So this toy now handles as well in Gearwalk mode as it did in fighter mode. And as an added benefit, they've included a little swinging clip that comes down that you can attach the gun to as one more way to display the toy. But is it all milk and honey? Maybe not. There's one little issue that seems to plague this release, and it's this gap right here. Now on my toy, it's pretty minimal. I probably wouldn't have noticed anything if I hadn't seen some worse examples, but the real culprit here is this little peg on the inside that goes into that little slot there. When it comes up, that peg should be tight enough that everything is held perfectly together, just like that. But you can see it's not. There's, for whatever reason, just a tiny bit of give. Now on my old Michael toy, there is none of this. That is perfectly seamless right there. So one area that has gotten a slight bit worse seems to be a fit and finish issue. On some toys you see it look like this in a lot of the pictures, which is unfortunate. Mine at least is stiff enough where it's barely noticeable most of the time. This toy comes with a gun. The gun looks like this. It's got a little mechanism here that you pull down, and then that enables an extension, and then you can get a fingernail in underneath here, pry down the front of the gun, and make it into an alligator, or bring it back like this, and that's the new Batroid or Gearwalk mode. Let's push that handle back into place. You do get some fixed posed hands. Here's a gun gripping hand. I'm just gonna fish that in there, and it's pretty stiff when it's brand new, and you see, gets a nice good death grip on there. There's also a saluting hand and a fist for you to choose from. Note that it's a ball joint at the end. We just take our toy, focus, and grab our articulated hand, which has fingers that open and close, ball jointed thumb, trigger finger separate from the other 3 fingers. Decent enough, works great, but if you want to use that fixed posed hand, there you go. And now you are pew-pewing like it ain't no thing. Ignore the paint on my hands and sleeves. I'm still working on this house, and that's why I haven't been getting as many reviews, any reviews, like you used to. Before we move on to Gearwalk mode, here's the toy on the display stand. It's not doing anything but keeping the toy off the ground, but still, that lets you get some off-balance poses, which can be a lot of fun. The other thing I want to point out before we go into Gearwalk mode is just how great the articulation is at the ankle. Also, it's a ratcheted joint, so if you're doing some crazy stuff, you can depend on these feet to hold the toy up for you. So let's see if we can hear it. You hear that little click, click? So that's great, and you can see it comes way up, comes way back. Look at that, how aggressive you can get this Gearwalk and still have those feet flat. And then also from the side, we can bring the foot this way or that way, and we can twist. So these feet, a lot of fun, really allow you to put this thing into an aggressive pose and enjoy it on your shelf. All right, but let's get to that last difference. And there's actually 2 of them. One is a lot easier to show you on camera than the other, so bear with me here. All right, spinning the toy around. There are now 3 screws in this hip housing. If we look at the Michael toy, and don't worry, we will, it has 1 screw. Now, I'll also say that both of these toys have equally tight hips. So what is the benefit of that? I do not know. The big problem with these toys were the shoulder joints, and Michael here is one of the most egregious examples of it. There's a swing backwards joint that can be loose and an up and down joint. Neither of those addressed really in any material way on this toy, but everything is so tight right out of the box. I'm hoping any tolerance issues have been resolved. You can see this actually takes some pressure to move in either direction. This is also painted. It was painted on some of the original VF-25 toys, and that might help prevent that rocking back motion. Now there is one more difference that I found, and that is this plate behind the head. This is the difficult to show you one. There's a peg back there now, and the shape, the contour that goes into the back is a little bit different. I don't know if this is really for our benefit or if this plate was just changed somewhat. Here you can see no peg on Michael in that back area and much softer edges to kind of go into the back. I wonder if that wasn't just a manufacturing thing, like they were having lots of parts come out warped, so they slightly changed the shape. Because much like the hips, I don't really see any difference while handling the figure. Another question I often get is how much metal is in this toy, and boy, does Bandai do a good job of making the answer to that unclear. But what I can tell you, the integral joint parts are metal, and heft-wise, this toy is about 330 grams, which is gonna make it feel really similar in your hand to one of those old Jetfire toys you might have had as a kid. So it's definitely got some good heft to it. It's also super fun to handle. We've got ball joints everywhere you could want them. Even these head lasers are ball joints that can come out a little bit. You do have a ball joint within the shoulder and the ability to pivot up and down. You can bring the arm out at the shoulder. And Bandai did some good thought with the elbows and knees. There's extensions that then let you get that more than 90 degrees of articulation, right? So if we want to have him cowering behind his shield, again, these are articulated fingers. We can close that. We can bring this down and get a nice, good defensive posture going. Bring the shoulder up. Still very cool that you could do all that. There's even a waist joint on here. It's more of a rocking, very limited, but still pretty cool. Ball jointed hips. And despite those 3 screws, I actually find them to be a little bit on the soft side. So I might tighten up one of those screws or all 3 of them at some point. You do get that gear walk joint that will help you with some posing. And there's the extension at the knee, which you can engage to get a little further. And again, nice clicky joints. So very sturdy. And you've already seen how much fun you could have with those ankles. I love posing this toy. I think it looks great in the mode and it's a lot of fun to handle. But what do you do if your gun gets knocked out of your hand? Well, you may recall there is a dagger accessory included with the toy. And yeah, you could just put that in the hand, no big deal. But what's really cool about this toy is that the shield here has a little trap door, and you can then keep the dagger inside that trap door, like so. And you can have this every single mode. That's gonna work out just fine. I can put this back on the toy now. Nothing interfered with there. So the dagger can stow along for the ride. And if you ever want to use it, you know where to find it. It's already in the toy. And you could even do some fun poses where you've got that trap door opening up. You could probably pull that dagger out a little to make this look a little more believable. But then you could have the other hand coming to grab that dagger. And that would be pretty cool. One thing I didn't talk about during articulation rundown here. There is a swivel at the knee. In order to engage that swivel, you do have to pull that extension out. But yeah, tons of fun poses to do here. There you go, that dagger's coming out, that hand's coming over for it. It's a pretty slick look. Here's a little bit more polished version of that grabbing the dagger pose. I think it looks slick, I'm a fan. Spinning this around, here's the display stand adapter for Batroid mode. It does a pretty good job of supporting both the back of the toy and the front of the toy. There are 2 teeth on this front pelvis section that latch in, and as you handle the toy in Batroid mode without the display stand adapter, it's possible to pop those teeth out, which might knock your toy over. With the display stand adapter, that's not a concern. I mentioned metal and heft. The ankles on these toys have a lot of that metal in them, which is great. It makes a nice low center of gravity while you're handling the toy, especially in gear walk mode, but it puts a lot of stress on the hip joint. And as you can see, even with those 3 screws, this hip joint isn't doing as good a job as I would like it to do. So maybe now is a great time for me to get in there and tighten those screws up. Overall, this toy being 24 centimeters tall in Batroid mode, 32 centimeters long in fighter mode, it's pretty much exactly 1/60 scale, even though Bandai doesn't really tout that. So it's gonna fit into a lot of collections out there. And the question becomes, does it belong in yours? And my answer to that would be yes. This is a fantastic toy. I am a huge fan of these VF-25 toys. The new matte paint scheme is going to make it match more lines you might have. So all good there. I say I obviously got this one, and I am looking forward to the future releases that Bandai has teased. So keep an eye out for those as well. I hope I've been able to answer all your questions. If not, please do leave a comment below. Let me know what you're curious about. Please subscribe if you like the content. Also, check out anymoon.com. And it's good to be back, everybody. Looking forward to having some more reviews soon. Thanks a lot.